Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Dada's show, coming to you from World Vision Kenya, the regional headquarters here in Karen, Nairobi. I am Ashiko Mbune. Now, Dada's show aspires to promote the spirit of sisterhood and solidarity, and we do this by creating a safe and open platform for women from all corners of this country, different ages, to sit and discuss issues pertaining to their health, their lifestyle, their careers, their families, and anything that affects them in one way or another. Now, we recently celebrated the International Women's Day, and the theme of the day was investing in women to accelerate progress. This is, of course, coming on the backdrop of the very many and the spate in the cases, in the femicide and the GBV cases, which, of course, begs the question, are we really investing in our women? Research shows that just the first month of this year, 2024, there's already been 32 reported cases. And according to Femicide Count Kenya, they have been reported 504 cases between the year 2019 and 2024. We are just in March. And the trend, and the very, very troubling trend, continues. Which, of course, so today we're here to discuss what is causing the epidemic in the femicide. Of course, other people are talking about that there's the prosecution process is very ineffective and sluggish, where we are having the perpetrators still walking around all willy-nilly. Of course, others are talking about that the corruption is intense, which is, of course, creating gaps that is stopping and impeding the implementation of anti-GBV laws. What's your take on today's conversation? So joining me are women who have shed blood, sweat and tears so that they can be able to fight for the rights of the women out there who are losing their lives, the families out there who are losing their sisters, their mothers, their daughters. We are joined today to discuss this rather harrowing conversation that we are having, but we definitely have to have the discussion, and it definitely has to come to an end. Of course, we invite you at home to join us in this conversation, and any that we have ever had before, by getting in touch with us across all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1. You can also reach me directly on my social media platform at Ashiko the host. Before we jump into today's rather unfortunate conversation, but one that has to be had, let's take a look at the following feature.
On January 27, thousands of Kenyan women took to the streets to demand an end to femicide. The protests, which were the largest ever held against gender-based violence in the country. Since then, women have continued to rally online using the hashtags #StopKillingUs, #EndFemicideKE, and #TotalShutdownKE to voice their anger. The protests came in the wake of a spate of femicides that have garnered significant public attention. At least 14 women were killed in January alone. Some reports cite as many as 21 killings. They include Scarlett Wahoo, a well-known online influencer, and Rita Waeni, a 20-year-old university student who was brutally murdered and mutilated. Bloggers have actively condemned femicide and are actively campaigning against it. Some prominent cases, such as the 2018 murder of Sharon Otieno or the stabbing of the celebrated Olympian runner Agnes Tirop, received media attention and triggered previous waves of activism. Many other killings likely never made the news. Recently, protesters called out the persistent lack of state protection as well as misogynistic attitudes that justify acts of violence by blaming women's sexuality, morality, behavior, and appearance. Between 39% and 47% of Kenyan women experience gender-based violence in their lifetimes. Yet, while some men have joined the marches and publicly voiced their support, others have shown up to accost and antagonize women protesters. Various politicians have also made statements that appears to shift blame on women. Senator Tabitha Mutinda, for instance, suggested that young women are being killed due to their eagerness to meet men who will finance their expensive lifestyles. These responses underscore the urgency of the protesters' demands. To date, the only concrete responses have come from the Ministry of Interior and National Administration and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. The former has rolled out new regulations requiring short-term rental properties to register with the Tourism Regulatory Authority, as two recent femicides occurred in unregistered short-let apartments. Meanwhile, Kenyan newspapers report that the DCI is forming a specialized team that will expedite investigations into sexual offenses and murder incidences involving women and develop preventive strategies, though no further details on the scope of this effort have been made public. Comparative cases show that combating femicide requires sustained resource and policy commitments that address not only gaps in law enforcement, but also deeper societal drivers. High-level recognition is a critical first step.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, welcome to Dada's show. Our conversation today is something that has been hitting the headlines. It has been in discussion in every single forum that you're sitting in, which is the spate in the cases, in the femicide cases, and the rise in the femicide cases that is happening in Kenya. This is, of course, like I mentioned, coming from in the backdrop of just celebrating the International Women's Day. And we felt like this is a conversation that needs to be had. Remember, wherever you're watching us from, thank you for watching us. And please get in touch with us at KBC Channel 1 or reach me at Ashiko, the host. Now, let's just jump into today's conversation and let me introduce to you my wonderful panel, people who are no foreigners to the screens. You have seen them in one forum or another fighting for the rights of women. If it be the march, be it on TV. Of course, we all know Jerry Megwe. She is not a visitor on Dada's show. She's been here before, actually, 2022, yeah? She's been here before, and we're definitely honored to have her here again. She is a human rights activist. She's got very many titles. Human rights activist, defender, and the co-founder and executive director of Usikimia. Now, Usikimia is a platform that is established to offer refuge for the victims and survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And definitely we see Jerry's work all over the place, and I am honored to have you here, my dear. Thank you so much for joining us. We have another Jerry, and this is Jerry Joroge. She is the lead advocate at Usikimia. She is a lawyer by profession. And of course, like we're talking about, when people are claiming that the justice system is ineffective and sluggish, she's going to give us her take on that. Even for those people who at home are wondering, how do I report a case? How do I get help? Then definitely Jerry is here to answer those questions. And then finally, we cannot forget to introduce Mary Njoki. Mary Njoki is a counseling psychologist. As all these cases have been going on and on around, we've had people who have been victim shaming. We have been people who have been talking badly. People are saying some of these ladies deserve what is coming to them. And there's been a feel like there's a lack of emotional intelligence and empathy amongst the Kenyan public. So we have brought Mary Njoki here today so that she can teach us, how do we approach? If you're a victim, if you know a victim, how do you approach them? How do we even interact on the socials? Because that is where most of the brutal comments and the battering is happening. So karibu sana Mary Njoki. And of course, I cannot fail to acknowledge my wonderful audience who are here day in, day out. I'm also very, very encouraged that I have gentlemen in my audience, you know, who are here to say, yes, you know what? Yes, we are men, but we are supporting. This has to stop. So asante sana, gentlemen, for joining us, and ladies for also being here with us. So to get the ball rolling on today's conversation, I will start off with you, Jerry. I know you, like I was insisting. I know you, but for the people at home who don't know you, kindly, tell us a little bit about yourself and the state. Because if kama kukona mtu wako on the ground, especially in matters femicide and GBV, it is you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us what is the current state of affairs that we are dealing with.
I work at Usikimia. Usikimia, of course, is an organization that works towards ending, preventing, supporting, and as well as protecting victims and survivors of gender-based violence, especially women and girls. The other important thing to note is that Usikimia means do not be silent, which means we are breaking the taboos, because if you think about it, gender-based violence is very much we speak about it in whispers. We don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about it because it's taboo, it's stigma around it, and then there's so much shame. And if you really think about it, most of the times victims and survivors of GBV are normally ashamed for having gone through that experience. So, yeah. The other thing we do in Usikimia, we do a feeding program for children. This actually works towards mitigating the effects of gender-based violence, because you find sometimes children are lured with food. Children are lured with very simple things, a sweet, a chapati, anything. But we realize that children who are fed are happy children and they're not as vulnerable. And we have seen a reduction towards defilement in the areas in which we work by a very large percentage. We do women empowerment programs. We also have youth programs. We have vijanas, who we work with in the community. Other than that, we also have SRHR programs, which are programs which work towards building life skills in girls. That's sexual health and reproductive rights, menstrual hygiene and things around that. We have chamas for women. We do quite a bit, but the most that Kenyan public knows us for is the fact that we respond to gender-based violence. We do go all around Kenya when there is a need to and when there is a crisis. You'll find us in police stations, you'll find us in hospitals, and you'll find us in court as well. Other than that, we are very vocal on social media because, as we said, we are Usikimia. We are making it clear that we are not going to let these things go silenced. Yes.
So speaking of letting things go silenced, you've actually been very, very, very vocal about, femicide. You also took a forefront during the January march. What's the current state of affairs? We like to think, common knowledge is not common to all. There are people who still have their head buried in the sand. What's the current state of affairs as we speak?
In January alone, 32 women. And when I say 32 women, I mean the ones whose cases have been reported and are on media. I would like you to know that where we work, a woman died. It wasn't captured on media. We captured it. We were called to respond to that case, and by the time we got there, unfortunately, she had passed away. And that was never captured. How many women have died through femicide? And now, let me just make it clear. Femicide is a killing of women intentionally due to their gender. And when I say that, most people will be like, but homicide is homicide. I mean, everybody gets killed. Let's say, for example, somebody came here and shot us. Jerry will not be on media saying, oh, those women, it was femicide. There are markers, there are sexual and gender monitors, indicators that actually tell us this case is a femicide. Most of the time, there is sexual violence attuned to it. 80% of the killings in Kenya are related to intimate partner violence. So what we see as femicide right now is a culmination of years of unchecked, unfettered violence that has been going on. And if you think about it, other than that, there are women that die simply because of their age. They are women, age. And what happens is a lot of the times, and I know most Kenyans don't even know this, is these women are killed, they are branded as witches. And this has become an increasing thing. It used to be some communities. 7 women were killed in Kisii last year. 3 women were killed in Kwale, 2 in Kilifi, and a few others, 4 in Murang'a, if you saw that case. And all of these are women who were intentionally killed because of their age, because they are women, and they were branded witches. That is femicide. There are women who are killed because of their sexual orientation, right? And we are not comfortable with it, and so we kill them. I could give you an example of Sheila Lumumba. She died. So there are also many other reasons that when we bring it collectively, we come and we say this is femicide. There is women who die because of female genital mutilation. That is something that is done to women. And there are so many women and girls who die. Honor killing, where women are killed because
they have brought shame
to the family.
Shame
to the family. And
yeah.
all these things are captured within femicide. And yet even among the data we have curated, the data that is going around, some of these statistics have not even been captured.
Oh my.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jerry. So Jerry the lawyer, tell us what is actually the process? You know, what is the law process? I want to say due process. I don't know if that's a right word. From the moment someone reports, and what's your take on the public's opinion that the justice system is very sluggish and ineffective, and corruption is standing in the way of anti-GBV laws being implemented?
Honestly, it's so unfortunate that as a lawyer and as a mother that I would agree with that, that I would agree our judiciary process is sluggish, our police don't do what is right, what is honorable for the ones who have lost their lives. Because you will report and for them it's a complete non-issue.
Yes.
And like you had said earlier, they start justifying, maybe she was in a short skirt, maybe she shouldn't be in a certain room with a certain man. That is how they justify. And then at the end of the day, you ask them, what about the widower who was busy lighting her jiko and she was killed?
And she was killed.
She was not dressed in a short skirt. She did not visit a man in a room, and that was the cause. So how do you justify it?
Yes.
I think the problem is we keep saying this, and I think a lot of funding goes into it, trying to train the police on better ways to deal with GBV victim, intimate partner violence. That doesn't happen. Nothing much happens. It is so unfortunate that if you look at it, even as per the data, it is actually the women police who are least bothered about what happens to their fellow women. You're lucky enough if you get a man who is willing to assist. And if you look at it, even like the special units that are in police stations, most of them are actually for gender and children are headed by men.
Yes.
Because the problem is we have this narrative of women are their worst enemies. And at times it becomes very difficult when you really want to change that narrative and it doesn't work. The problem is most of our GBV issues and cases that happen in court, half of them, it's our organizations that do the rescue. By the time it's landing in a police station, we have the ones who have come forward and we are asking their assistance. They're not involved in the rescuing, so they have no idea. The same way it goes to court and a magistrate or a judge, all they have is a charge sheet. They have no idea the background, the story of what happened. And the way they deal with the victims or the family of the victims, it's their docket. I just want this charge sheet read, the plea, whether it's a plea of guilty or not guilty, next, bond terms and bail terms. And I know it's so unfortunate, like you're saying, some of them walk around. It's because as per our constitution, every offense is bailable.
Yes.
But then also, there are mechanisms that the ODPP has put in regards to that to deal with whether someone should be awarded bail or not. But then at the end of the day, as recent as I think a few weeks ago, there's a magistrate who got dismissed because he altered bail terms and allowed an accused person who had defiled a 6-year-old off the hook. And that person had actually jumped. He had not attended court. But then that claim was filed in 2018. This is the time you're giving us, this is the time you're dismissing the magistrate.
Oh dear.
What happens to that child?
So the person has actually still been sitting on the bench, eh? So
yes.
How many other things have just fallen through the cracks?
Through the cracks.
Oh dear.
Did that claim or that petition that was filed to the Judicial Service Commission make him rethink terms? What happens to that 6-year-old who was defiled? How does she move from there? How does her family move?
Wow.
Edited to add.
Yes.
Kenyans have a firm belief that actually systems work, which I find it very surprising. As somebody who is always within, those places, I can tell you they don't work. A lot of times, we were having a crisis here just before we came into this meeting, simply because we have a child who was defiled, and he's even recovering from surgery. And we had a mention in court today. Do you know who has been arrested?
Who?
The mother. That is what we were trying to deal with when you were asking us what was happening, because the police have taken the child away and arrested the mother and accused her of negligence. She should have known that her boy was
She should have known, yeah?
So,
oh my.
that is where we are.
How do you tell that mother that she should have known?
You can't. You really can't. And that just stems to my next question to you, Mary. What is the general feeling? Where when everybody is asking, what is the cause? What is the root cause? What is the cause of this epidemic of femicide? Has society become a little bit too lax? Has the society deteriorated? of course, as you're saying, we've already been able to note one of the issues is, of course, the justice system, needs a lot of work to be done. In your professional capacity as a counseling psychologist, please tell us, what could some of the factors leading to the rise in the cases of femicide be?
It's quite unfortunate that we really need to want to, like, there is no reason, there is no justification whatsoever to say this is the reason someone is murdered or was just peacefully at home. Like the recent incident where the lady was found at home, the neighbors she was in her home. After a long day at work, you are in your house. And this is where this is happening. So there is no justification. But I'd say the economic crisis, people are lacking empathy, people are on high stress, and everyone is like hyper vigilant. Everyone is just seeking to survive, but there is no excuse to validate why somebody else's life has to be the price to be paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and I agree with you. There's absolutely no justification, and definitely we're living in hard times. Of course, there's economic crisis that we're dealing with. People are angry. People are hyper vigilant. There's so many not justifications, but there are certain things that are contributing to the current, but making them be it as such. There's still not grounds for people to behave the way they should behave. Now, there's something. Let's continue with the conversation in part of. You've already expressed concern over how the justice system is operating. What would you like to see the government do to step in against the fight, on femicide?
Number one, acknowledge that we have a crisis. This is a national crisis. I keep saying, for example, we have Ebola running rampant, right? And 50 people have died in 1 month. Would we be silent?
No, we would not.
Would we not have had actionable items that would be seeing the government doing? What exactly has the government done so far? Zero. So now, I need the government, number one, to act on this as a national crisis that it is.
Yes.
Because if the government doesn't acknowledge it, then what makes you think that the general population is going to look at it as such? So the first one is acknowledge. Actually put out a statement that we have a national crisis of both GBV, which, as I said, culminates into femicide.
Yes.
So I need them to actually call femicide by its name, right?
Yeah.
Number two, I need the government to start looking at the deep-rooted causes of why we are looking at like this. Why? I mean, the latest KNBS studies that came out last year says 1 in 3 women in Kenya, 1 in 3 women in Kenya are going through an issue of gender-based violence. We have to ask ourselves, what has led us to this place? Where is the education? And I don't mean education to children in school, even to the general public. The thing is, years ago, I think I was a kid, there was an ongoing public information about AIDS and HIV.
Yes.
I was completely terrified of the idea of HIV and AIDS because it was everywhere, on the radios, on the TVs, on
There
the
were posters
in the market.
in
My
the markets
goodness, where is that robust campaign? Where is that for gender-based violence? That's where we should start at. Where are the barazas? Where are the radio announcements? Where is the TV? I mean, people talk in the morning and you listen to some of the things that are
they
said in
say.
these
Oh
shows.
my,
And I'm
yeah.
like, Jesus Christ, we are even perpetrating. That is why people will come on social media and say whatever they want to say because they listen to these things. I mean, you listen and understand because you hear. And if every time the information that is coming is misogynistic, is antagonistic towards women, it is messaging. And let me tell you, the problem of how we look at these things is we see GBV as a women's problem.
As a women's problem.
Whereas
and that's always the root
GBV,
cause.
yes, whereas GBV affects all of us.
All of us, it
We
does.
actually have clients who are men. So we have crisis and these things. The thing is, systemic oppression doesn't just affect women. It will come for women and then it will come for men. And all of this affects us. So, I mean, I hate the fact that I have to justify that she is your, no, she doesn't have to be your sister, your mother, your auntie, your daughter. She's a woman.
She's a woman, and she's a human being.
And that means she's a human being.
Yes.
And she needs to get equal rights under law. It's that simple. So I need the government to get up. They have money. They need to do a campaign, proper campaign, very well coordinated, that starts kutoka kwa vijiji, vitongoji, huko, inside, everywhere. We need to see that. That is the only way we are going to start dealing, because people need to be able to recognize. When a child cannot identify, I hate the fact that we even have to talk about children. 2 months ago, a 2-month-old baby was raped and died. So when we have 2-month-old babies dying, and you want to justify that we cannot teach children comprehensive sexual education so that children can be able to identify.
They can be able to identify, and I love that. They can be able to sit down and identify, when this person did this to me, this is not right.
And when we do it,
yes,
we actually get actual cases from these children. When you speak to them and they're like, that's what has been happening.
But this happened, this. Imagine, and completely robbing their innocence. Thank you so much, Jerry. And I really hope that, you know, somebody has your ear. Now, before we go on break, I want to ask Jerry, the lawyer, a question. Yes, we've talked about how the justice system, etc., but we're also not telling them not to shy away. Don't shy away from reporting the cases. Still go out there. You know, you could get there and it could be a good day. It could, you know, who knows? So what is the process? Let's look at it because what we've always gotten mostly from the show is we like to tell people that, you know, information, social media, all of these things is a treasure trove of information. What is the process of actually getting justice? If someone comes and reports, or myself or someone reports, you know, GBV has happened, how do they go about it from the moment the altercation has happened?
In a system that would work.
Yes.
In a system that would work.
Yes, let's look at in a perfect world.
And I'm saying this, if the system worked and it was excellent and everything.
Yes.
You go to a police station, you report assaulted you.
Yes.
The police person puts your entries at the OB book, gives you a P3 form. They should, but they normally tell you go and print it outside because they don't have papers. So you have to go. You go to hospital, you're assessed, and it is stamped by a surgeon, and they feel everything and they test. If you are raped or defiled, the medication you have to be given for prevention of the pregnancy, and the STIs and the HIV and AIDS.
Yes.
Right. Thereafter, you go back to the police station and tell them your P3 form was filled, and then the process starts. They open a file, they take your statement. If there was any evidence that was collected in the police station, if there were clothes, they had blood stains, all those things are put.
Yeah.
So what normally happens, we have a police file and we have the ODPP's file. There are so many leaflets that are inside, so then now they pick and prescribe the desired charge as per the penal code, and then they forward it to the ODPP. Now the person in charge who says, so now this person can be arrested, pick them, and then you bring them to court. If the process worked, that is how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Once they are taken to court, the charges are read out aloud for them in a language they understand.
Yes.
For them to understand this is what they are being charged with.
Yes.
Then they either enter a plea of guilty or not
guilty.
Then they're awarded bail terms or bond terms. At times, for police officers who are serious and they generally want to follow the case through, some of them actually fill an affidavit that is stamped by a lawyer, and they say that we need 14 days before we can actually proceed for us to collect further evidence, further information and all those things. And then, of course, the court will grant you for 14 days. That person ends up being in the remand in the closest police station close to court. And then once they have given everything, then the process begins. So after that process begins, so the complainant, who is represented by the state, which is the ODPP's office, you now come and give your statement and everything. After you have asked questions by the accused person, if they have an advocate present or not, and if the court, initially before the court sees that they're not fit to be given bail and bond terms, on the basis of if you release them, they will interfere with the process, they will threaten the witnesses and such things. Nowadays, we know our own accused persons have access to phones. How that happens amazes me. That's what I'm saying. If the process worked, they would not have the phones.
Yeah.
And then thereafter, once the complainant has given the evidence, is what we call now the court looks at it, do they have a case to answer? Once the court passes a ruling that it says that this accused person has a case to answer, then now it is for them to put their defense. If the process worked. After that, judgment is given. After judgment is given, depending on what the court says, then sentencing comes later.
Yes.
Then after they are sentenced, we know whether they are going to serve 33 years consecutively, 11 years, such.
Yes.
Depending on the charge, whether it is charge 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So thank you so much. Now, finally, before we go on break, I want to ask you, Mary, because it's a part that I feel is the thorn in our flesh a lot, especially when we're talking about GBV and femicide. What's the ideal way to deal with people? What's the ideal way to deal with survivors, families of people who've been psychologically? How do we even operate? Because people have just been throwing words all over the place, and social media is, you know, is worldwide, globally received. So you don't know who the message is reaching who. Especially we're finding people because on social media talking the way they need to talk. What would be some of the best practices in such a case?
Is being empathetic, and Usikimia is survivor-centered. So this means that we are looking at the narrative of this person.
Yes.
Their story is true. There is no way someone will come and give lies or a story that does not add up when it's their experience.
Yes.
So number one, being very empathetic and believe their story. They wouldn't be making up such a story to get anywhere. So believe in their story, be empathetic towards them, understand where they're coming from, allow people to grieve. When someone has come and they have gone through, there is intimate violence, or they have lost a loved one through femicide, the first thing that they need is allow this person, they have just gone through a loss, they are bereaved. There is the grief, which is internal state of them grieving the loss that they have experienced. Allow people to experience that in a way, and the society has set ways where people should behave in a certain way, but this is a very individualized experience that only that person has lived. So allow people space, be there. Sometimes people don't even want you to talk, and what is happening mostly, especially on social media, like you mentioned.
Everybody has an opinion about everything.
Yeah, and victim blaming.
And victim blaming. Thank you so much, Mary. Like we said, I like what you said, empathy, understanding, believe the person. If someone has gone out of their way to come and talk to you about a matter, believe what you're being told, you know. Of course, we are cognizant. We have all the senses, you know. If a story does not, you know, make sense, you know, you can always do your own investigation. But so far, can we please extend empathy to victims, to their families, to each other? You know, let's also be very compassionate with each other. And I think once we start looking at each other as human beings, then we will be in a position to start the fight in ending femicide. So we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with a question and answer session. Don't go far away. Welcome back to the second part of Dada's show. If you're just joining us, you have missed quite an insightful first part of the show. However, not all is lost. Our conversation today is on the rising cases of femicide in Kenya. Of course, we witnessed the largest anti-femicide march happen in January, and we have just recently celebrated the International Women's Day. And the question in everybody's mind is, what is happening? Are we really investing in women? Which was the topic of this year's International Women's Day. So now we are in the question and answer session, which is my favorite part, because it gives my audience an opportunity to interact with our audience, because I'm sure there are so many questions that they have, and of course it's an opportunity for them to actually interact. So to start us off, we have Brenda. Brenda, I believe, has a question for our panel.
Thank you so much. So my name is Brenda Olenja. I work with World Vision Kenya as a donor relations liaison. And my question is to Njeri. So what advice would you give to women or a woman who is maybe in an abusive relationship, but she's afraid, or they are really afraid to speak out or get support? What advice would you give them?
One, I know it's really hard, especially because of the society and the way we view living marriages and also our view on single mothers. But this is a thing. Women are dying in abusive relationships. 80% of the data collected on femicide are women who are married, right? Or women who are in intimate partner relationships with their loved ones. So you need to live. You have to live. There are ways for living safely, and there are places you can contact, and you'll have full confidence that no one is going to let your person know. So we can give you an exit strategy that you can live safely. And the thing is, society is society. Whether you leave or you stay, they're still going to view you the same way. You just need to love yourself enough to want to walk away from abusive situations. So please call.
Thank you so much. And I think that's really, really important information. If you're at home and you're watching us and you're in a situation and, you know, something that Jerry has said or something that the other Jerry has talked about, or Mary, and it's touching you and you need help, remember what she's just said. Love yourself enough to walk away. Love yourself to want to leave, you know, and this is not leave kuondoka, it's leave tuishi as a person. Thank you so much, Brenda. That's a very important question. Our next question is from William.
Thank you. My name is William from World Vision, and I wanted to know, how can men be better activists and support the anti-GBV movement in Kenya?
I am a firm believer that we are not ending GBV without men.
Yeah.
And it would be unfortunate for us to always look out at men as just perpetrators. But this is the question I'm going to keep on asking men. When things happen, most men say, it's not all men. But then again, there's this scenario. I'm here and a swarm of bees is coming towards me, right? I understand there are bees that don't sting and there are bees that sting. How do I know? There's no identifier. So I need men to become more vocal. Where are the voices of the not all men? Where are the voices of the good men? When I post something, I get attacks a lot. If you go through my socials, it's crazy. I don't even read them because I know somewhere along there'd be like 1,000 comments, and out of 1,000 comments, 500 will be men coming to defend. I'm not accusing men. This is not a gender war. And I need men to understand that uptick is not a gender war. And I need the voices. We need, as women, one of the best things that happened for this march that really surprised me is the turnout was 30% men.
Yes.
That is already men being in solidarity with women. We need to see more men in solidarity with women. Don't be afraid. You'll be called simp anyway. You know, I mean, right now the condition is if you say something in support of women, you'll become the whipping boy. Are you ready? Are you willing to stand up? Are you willing to say, listen, I am going to support women. It comes at a cost, but I'm willing to stand up and be counted. When women are speaking, am I willing to listen? Am I willing to put aside the things I am, and am I willing to use my privilege to actually support women? Show up for events that support women. Show up in social media spaces and just speak up and say, you know what, we need to be better. Sometimes that's all we need. Because men will listen to men. I will say something and they will water it down because I am not a man. I do not speak from the experience of men. So I need men like you, and thank you for that, and thank you for coming up and just speak up.
Yeah. So our next question is from Susan. Susan, karibu sana.
Thank you so much. My name is Susan Wairimo, the founder of Inspire Teenagers Foundation, based in Ngong, Kajiado County. I'm also a counselor and a paralegal, and there has been a problem with women and girls accessing psychosocial support and even legal support. So I'd like to ask the psychologist and even the lawyer, you can answer this. How do we ensure, and also what interventions do we use to ensure that women in marginalized and rural areas can access psychosocial support and legal services and also be able to speak out without fear? Thank you.
Okay. Jerry?
Thank you so much for your question. It's unfortunate. We are very few lawyers who practice SGBV. And I say this because women, we are very emotional beings. Some, I have had my colleagues say, I've given them 1 or 2 cases and they're like, I'm sorry, I just cannot continue because it's too emotionally invested. With that, as it is, it's a branch of law that people have really shied away from and they have shown no interest. The worst bit is you find a lawyer who will exploit you for the benefit of giving you legal services. I will say this, there are many organizations that gladly offer pro bono work, likely as I do, but we are very few and that becomes a challenge. And in this country, if we are being honest, the justice system is very expensive. You either have someone who is willing to sponsor you, or if you don't, you'd likely get a pro bono advocate. In the courts, of course, we have the pro bono lawyers, but I am sorry to say this, but we mostly give pro bono advocates the work of robbery with violence and such. The sexual offenses are not a consideration. Yes, it is. It is either robbery with violence or theft by servant. Those are the ones that the courts are in a hurry to give other advocates, vis-a-vis wanting to give them sexual offenses cases or GBV cases. Recently, I think 3 or 4 months ago, when we were doing the inaugural conference of the SGBV, and this is something that the judiciary itself admitted, trying to train lawyers, by then our president of LSK stated, even when they asked for the data to have lawyers who would take up, there were very few. And even the head of the High Court, the president of the High Court stated, we are trying to find a way to train our judges and magistrates to understand, because to them it's only a charge sheet that comes in front of them.
Yes.
They need to be able to understand the backstory. So as they deal with this person, they get the point. But then they also stated none of the judges and magistrates, I'm sorry to say this, want to take up, because they also say it's also becoming a lot for us, right? If you look at the court that we have in Shanzu, as 1 year after it being put into force, the cases were less than 1,000, because you walk into that court, you've already been stigmatized by your community, that you cannot handle, you're not woman enough to hold your marriage, because suddenly we seem you being married and you stayed in a battered marriage gives you some title or some preference or some account, makes you someone in the society, right? I remember when the sponsors went back to see how the court is picking up, they met a girl who had been defiled by her father. She's pregnant. So now I remember they were asking, so what do they call each other? Is it a mother and daughter relationship, or are they sisters? So I know it is difficult, but I will still say it is important for women to speak up. As difficult as it is and as challenging as it is, please speak up. You might as likely find me or someone else who will gladly pick up your case with no problem.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for even the work that you do. I want to move the question as well to Mary. Now, when we're talking about psychosocial support, even before they get to the point of actually looking for the services of a lawyer, just to get out of that house, I mean, how would you help women in rural and, marginalized community? We're talking people in informal settlements. And we've been talking about cases like what she's talking about in Shanzu, where it's a badge of honor to keep your marriage together, despite of being beaten like a snake every day. So please, how would you go about it?
Yeah, thank you again for the question. The first thing I would say is there is no health without mental health.
Yes.
And gender-based violence really messes with a person's health, mental health. So it should be easily accessible, the way I'm able to get right outside my house and get a dispensary and get help for my physical wound. It's as important to be able to know I can walk out of my house and talk to a therapist or a psychologist and get help. But there is a lot of stigma and bias around mental health, even in this day and age. When someone thinks that to even speak up and say, I'm sad, I am going through this, it's draining me to be in this marriage. It's difficult for someone to even feel free to express that, because it's hush-hush. Like again, they said, you need to maintain this marriage. If this marriage fails, you need to put it together. So number one, stopping the stigma, and then how accessible can we get the mental health? Can it be at an affordable fee? Even for that person who is outside, in the rural areas to know that I can easily go to this hospital and get therapy at an accessible.
Now, our final question of this session is from one Mr. Bernard.
Thank you, Ashiko, and thank you to our panelists for the information provided. Now, my question, at the community level, we got the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms that at times brings together both the perpetrators and the victims to negotiate at that level. At the end of the day, the victim don't get the deserved justice because they escape the formal justice system that you explained earlier. So what should be done to this in terms of, should there be limitation and to what cases they need to handle or something like that? And also in line with that, I think there are some forms of violence that have been normalized within the communities, especially the fragile context we're talking about. So that you going as a champion for anti-GBV, at times you're seen as the enemy. So what can we do to ensure that this doesn't happen? Thank you.
Excellent question.
Thank you for your question. I will say this. As per the ODPP rules and regulations in dealing with, specifically because the ones that exist are for sexual offenses, is that there should not be any form of ADR discussed when it comes to sexual offenses. That is a policy. However, like you stated, communities tend to do it hush-hush. Recently, I will commend the ODPP on the basis of trying to attack that, because I know there are a couple of chiefs and headmen who had been arrested and charged in court for that. It's very difficult, like you're saying. We've gotten to the point where at times we normalize SGBV within our communities. Even your own family, as far as your uncle and auntie, it is such an ordinary thing. I remember when I was growing up, there was one of my uncles who would batter the wife, my aunt. And I used to wonder, and I remember there's a time I asked, why are you beating her? And you could see the shock on my uncle's face. And he asked,
dare you?
How dare you ask me that? But thank God, I think I keep saying my parents are very progressive. My mother didn't even find that question offensive at all, but she asked the same thing, exactly what she's asked. Like, why are you doing it? What is the justified reason for you doing that? And then, of course, the brothers and everyone in the family sits down and has a conversation about it, And if you want to see the effect of that, till today, none of my uncles will attempt SGBV, because at the back of their mind, as they say it in our community, Jerry will follow you. You see, that enough someone, if in our own family knows, if this I do, it is as soon as possible as this girl will do something, right? So the question, here comes the thing, do you have, let's not even look at the neighbor or anything, within your small families, I believe there's a perpetrator of SGBV, why are you not speaking out? Why are you waiting for me, an outsider, to come and get into your family and fix the issue, right? As much as the policies and regulations to attempt to fix that, like Njeri has said, are you an activist yourself? Are you fixing the issue? It's the same, I think we had a case back with Njeri 2 years ago. I had prepared a child to exactly state what exactly happened. And that night, the mother went and did all my work. When we went to court, the child could not give evidence. Asked what happened, it was a defilement case. As a child would say it in Kiswahili, niliguzwa chini, chini ni wapi? Because the court will ask you, chini ni wapi? Alikuguza nyuma, nyuma ni wapi? Can we educate your children? Say as it is. And when I asked the mother why she did it, she said, I do not want my child saying bad words. And sooner or later, that child currently contacted me and said, they cannot live with their mother because their mother, what did their mother do? Destroyed their life. They don't trust their mother. And she'll say, me and Jerry destroyed her family. We didn't. You did it all by yourself. Because what did she do? She was bought a TV set and chairs and put an M-Pesa shop by the perpetrator.
Oh.
So now here you are, you have your child who doesn't trust you, doesn't want to be in contact with you, and you blame us for breaking your family.
Wow.
We were trying to fix your family, but you decided that was the best way. And even now we sit in forums and judges and magistrates and tell us, I'm sorry, Ms. Njoroge, but we don't understand what you're saying, because what I want to hear is that this man touched my private parts and did this. Because if you look at the way our charges are framed in the penal code, those terms must exist for it to be called that charge.
Exactly.
For that person to be charged with that offense.
Yes.
When you start saying they charged me down, down is where? Is it your foot? Is it your ankle? Is it your knee? At times you look at the vulnerable people, it's like a mess after the other.
Yeah.
You know, they have been defiled, the perpetrator knows you're desperate for something, and they use that as a target.
Yeah.
Honestly, I remember there's one, I think, a lady who got stabbed 17 times. The one in Roiro, and until today I have always said, I loved how that magistrate handled that issue. She told us, I can honestly see this victim is not about to give me testimony for the next 6 months. Because she could even barely get out of her own house because of the insecurity. You should have seen the chief busy running to her and telling her, please forgive this man, he has 3 children. You
Oh,
have to
wow.
but when you are busy looking for
Oh,
another
my.
person to do stuff with, that lady didn't know you were married and you have 3 kids. But now the chief has to come and tell this victim, consider him, he's a breadwinner. I love how that magistrate stood with her. And I remember how much support she had from her own parents. Told her, fine, you did not know, but you must get justice.
Wow. I mean, some of these stories and some of these experiences that you're sharing are just completely mind-blowing. But, you know, I'm with you, Bernard, in terms of, you know, there definitely needs to be a lot of intervention. But like Jerry has rightfully put it, it needs to start from us. It needs to start from within. You're the one who knows these people. You know, if something happens, you know that you can always go and blow the whistle. And I know that whistleblowers don't get the best rap, but at the end of the day, whistleblowers might have saved somebody's life. If people are trying to hush a matter and say, you know what, so it happened, walitatua, walifanya nini. I mean, I can't believe someone was bought for seats and opened for an M-Pesa shop, and that completely is supposed to write everything. Yes, I mean, that's ridiculous from where I stand. Anyway, we have come to the end of this very engaging, very insightful episode on the rising cases of femicide in Kenya. We are only in March, and the numbers and the trend is really, really, really troubling. The numbers are still on the rise. So as we celebrate, as we are still in the celebrating mode of International Women's Day, kindly let us remember that it is happening in the backdrop of a lot of femicide. There are still murderers out there, there's still perpetrators out there who have not been dealt with. Activists such as Jerry, activists such as the people who are sitting in my audience who are trying, need our help. So remember, this is not a gender war. This is not a woman problem. This is a society problem. So let's come together and fight this, and for sure we will be able to finish it. So I want to thank my team. I want to thank the team at KBC. Of course, our location partner at World Vision Kenya, the regional headquarters here in Karen. Myself, Ashiko Mbune, my wonderful panel and audience. I will catch you next week. Have a very, very safe and empowering week. Till then, bye-bye.